Let's tidy up a bit together today. Not a full clean and not forcing ourselves to throw things away. Just taking a look at some items that have been around a little too long. Some things aren't broken or messy, so we keep them without thinking. But over time, the house starts to feel smaller, and we feel a bit tired just looking around. In this video, I'll go through 12 very common items you probably have at home. Nothing dramatic, just things that may have already done their job. If a few of them feel familiar, it might be a good moment to let them go and make the space feel lighter again. First, let's look at items we buy just because they're trendy and how they quietly take up space without real value. Buying things just because they're trending is a lot like trying a viral food online. At first, you're curious. Everyone says it's amazing, so you try it right away, but afterward, you realize it's not bad, just not memorable. Sometimes it even feels like a waste of money. Trendy items at home work the same way. Here's a small challenge. Open any drawer or a corner of your kitchen and pick one item you bought simply because it was popular. It could be a Stanley Cup, a bear-shaped ice tray, or a decor piece that once flooded social media. Once you're holding it, do this quickly. First, think about how many times you've used it in the past 3 months. Then ask yourself honestly, if you had never bought this item before today, would you spend money to buy it again now? If your answer is not sure, or probably not, you already know. To be honest, I bought many things like this. At first it felt exciting, my home looked more modern and trendy, but after a short time, those items just sat in the cupboard. When I cleaned and saw them, it wasn't about the money anymore, it was the irritation of something taking up space without helping my life. What surprised me was how quickly my space changed once I stopped buying trends. The house became tidier, easier to clean, and I no longer felt tired just looking around. Your mind feels lighter too, because everything around you is something you actually use. From now on, whenever you're about to buy a trendy item, pause for a few seconds and ask, will this make my life easier over the next 6 months? If not, let it go. And when trend purchases are reassessed, it's a good time to look at a familiar but often overlooked area, the pantry. In the next video, I'll reorganize it, not just to make it neater, but to slow down and rethink how I want to step into 2026. Less clutter, clearer priorities, and small sustainable changes to start the new year. Next, we move to items kept for nostalgia, like old VHS tapes, which may hold memories, but no longer serve a practical purpose. Some items are kept not because they're beautiful or trendy, but because of memories. VHS tapes are a perfect example. Just looking at them brings back a whole scene, family evenings in front of the TV, rewinding tapes, waiting for the movie to start. That feeling is real, and because of it, the tapes stay on the shelf for years. Try doing something simple with me. Open your VHS cabinet. You don't need to decide whether to keep or discard anything yet. Just look at each tape and ask yourself, when was the last time I actually watched this? Not remembered it, but truly played it and watched it from start to finish. The truth is most of us no longer use VHS. TVs don't support them anymore, and movies are available on streaming platforms with better quality and much more convenience. These tapes no longer serve entertainment purposes, they simply occupy space. Letting go felt difficult at first because it seemed like letting go of memories. But eventually, it became clear that memories don't live inside the tapes. They live within us. Once the VHS tapes were gone, the bookshelf felt lighter, the space more open, and there was no sense of loss like I once feared. If you want to start gently, choose the tapes you know you'll never watch again and let those go first. You can take photos of the covers as keepsakes if you want and move fully to streaming without guilt. At this point, something becomes obvious. It's not just VHS tapes. Many old items stay in the house simply because they used to matter. But what about broken toys? That's what we'll talk about next. Another area to tackle is broken or unused toys where letting go creates space for children's present joy and play. Parents often hesitate when holding a broken toy, not because the toy itself is valuable, but because it's tied to a moment when a child first learned to walk, laughed for the first time while playing with it, or quietly played alone on an afternoon. Do this clearly and calmly. Gather your child's toys and quickly check each one. Toys that are safe and still usable can stay. Toys that are broken, missing parts, or no longer function and realistically cannot be fixed within a week should be set aside. The important truth is this: toys exist to be played with. When a toy can no longer be used, it no longer serves its purpose. Keeping it only makes storage more crowded, makes it harder for children to find usable toys, and adds to the fatigue of cleaning. Broken toys stayed because they were tied to feelings of love and memories of joyful moments. But children don't need broken toys. They need safe, clear spaces where they can easily take out, put away, and focus on play. Once broken toys were removed, play became more focused and calmer. You don't need to remove everything at once. Start with items that clearly no longer work. Letting go isn't about losing memories, it's about prioritizing your child's present. After broken toys are taken care of, it often becomes easier to notice other things that are still around, simply because they were bought at some point, especially decorations. That's what we'll look at next. Next, notice decorations that linger from past seasons or trends, subtly weighing down your home's energy. Home decorations often stay out of habit. Old wall decals, seasonal decorations, left on shelves, decor pieces that once felt nice but now feel heavy. They're not broken, but they no longer make the space feel comfortable. Outdated decorations subtly age a space. Everything may be clean, but the room still feels cluttered and tiring. The eyes absorb too many details that no longer fit the present. Many decorations stayed simply because they could stay there. But once old decals were removed and seasonal decor reduced, the room immediately felt brighter and lighter. Not because of buying new things, but because unnecessary ones were removed. The solution is clear: let go of decorations that have passed their moment. Items tied to a specific season phase or old aesthetic. When replacing, choose simple pieces that last longer and don't require frequent rearranging. When decor is simplified, the house starts to feel easier to breathe in. Not long after that, another area becomes noticeable: the kitchen pantry, where unnecessary items tend to pile up quietly. Here we focus on the pantry, where expired or forgotten food quietly clutters and even affects safety. Expired food is the most dangerous type of clutter because it affects health. Pantries often look fine. Everything neatly arranged, jars in place, making it easy to ignore. Spices, canned food, and snacks expire faster than expected. Bought impulsively, used once or twice, then pushed to the back of shelves. Over time, they become invisible, yet familiar, assumed to still be safe. During a thorough pantry clean, many spice jars appeared long past their expiration date. They showed no mold or color change, which made them easy to trust. That realization was unsettling. These items could have continued entering daily meals unnoticed. Once expired and unidentifiable items were removed, the pantry felt visibly lighter. More importantly, cooking felt safer. A tidy space mattered, but peace of mind mattered more. The task is simple: discard expired items. Label new purchases with dates and check every few months instead of waiting for a major clean. With the pantry lighter, another tiring area becomes clear: the closet. Another spot to check is the closet. Worn, ill-fitting, or rarely worn clothes can silently drain your energy. Closets feel cramped, not because they're too small, but because they hold too many items from the past. Clothes that are worn, ill-fitting, outdated, or rarely worn stay because they're not completely unusable. Every morning, energy is spent sorting through items that no longer serve you. The clutter is quiet but draining. Many clothes stayed with thoughts like maybe someday, but they only made the closet heavier. Once, only items worn within the past year remained. Everything changed: faster choices, more space, and better outfits with fewer clothes. Clothes that no longer serve the present don't regain value by staying. Start with what you're certain you won't wear again. The relief comes sooner than expected, and once the closet is lighter, another familiar group appears: items kept just in case. Here we gather broken electronics kept just in case they rarely return to use and quietly take up space. Broken electronics are often kept not because of their value, but because of a very familiar kind of hope. An old phone that won't turn on a laptop with a cracked screen, earbuds that only work on one side. They no longer function yet. They're tucked away in a drawer with the thought, maybe I'll fix it someday. The reality is that most of these items never return to working condition, not because they can't be repaired, but because life always places other priorities first. Today is busy, tomorrow it's forgotten, and the device stays where it is. Over time, these items don't just take up physical space, they also create a sense of mental backlog. There was a period when one drawer in my home was almost entirely devoted to old devices. Every time I opened it, I saw tangled cables, broken gadgets, useless accessories. The feeling wasn't regret, it was irritation. They felt like reminders of promises made to myself but never acted on. Once I accepted the truth that these items wouldn't be fixed anytime soon, letting them go became easier. No more hesitation, no more maybe later. The drawer became empty, and at the same time, my mind felt lighter, no longer carrying invisible, unfinished tasks. Keeping broken electronics only makes sense when there's a very clear plan when to fix them, where, and within what time frame. Without specific answers, those items don't need to stay. Letting them go isn't wasteful, it's making space for the present. With electronics out of the way, a different kind of clutter becomes visible items that appear harmless yet steadily claim space. Another collection to assess is free tote bags and similar items that seem harmless but silently crowd storage areas. Free tote bags look harmless. They're usually simple, lightweight, and labeled as reusable, which makes them easy to keep without much thought. Each one carries a small promise: someday it'll be useful, someday it'll come in handy, and so they stay. Over time, the number grows without notice. Some come from events, some carry brand logos, some are gifts with purchase. Different colors, different fabrics, but most of them remain untouched in the closet. In reality, I reach for only a few familiar ones. The rest rarely appear in daily life. At one point, opening the closet revealed a whole stack of bags I couldn't remember using. They weren't broken or dirty, so there was no clear reason to throw them away. But that lack of a reason became the problem. They occupied space while creating an uncomfortable in-between feeling, not truly needed, yet not clearly useless. When all the bags were gathered and I asked honestly, which ones do I actually use? The answer was surprisingly clear. Only a few stayed, the rest left. The closet felt lighter, but the bigger change was internal. There was no longer that lingering just-in-case thought because everything left had a clear purpose. Unused tote bags are like many other unnecessary items at home. They don't cause immediate trouble, but they quietly make space tighter and the mind heavier. Keeping them doesn't make life easier, it only prolongs indecision. Clearing the bags often leads to a quiet realization other harmless items are occupying space in much the same way. Next, focus on empty containers and jars which accumulate under the guise of saving for later but rarely serve a purpose. Empty containers and jars are the kind of clutter that hides well behind the idea of saving for later. They're clean, intact, neatly stacked, rarely seen as a problem. But precisely because they seem harmless, they quietly occupy drawers, kitchen cabinets, and storage spaces for years. The main reason they stay is potential. Maybe they'll be useful. Maybe something can go inside them someday. It sounds reasonable, but in reality, most of these containers never return to their intended role. They simply move from one corner to another, stacking up and making organization harder over time. Looking closely at the cabinets, I realized there were far more empty containers than I had imagined. They didn't cause obvious trouble or take up much space individually, but every time I opened a cabinet, there were extra seconds of searching, small moments of confusion, and those small moments accumulated daily. What needs to be done is actually very clear. Keep only the containers that are currently in use or have a specific purpose in the near future. Items without a clear plan don't need to stay. Once they're removed, organizing becomes much easier, and more importantly, there's no longer the mental burden of managing things that bring no real value. And once empty containers are cleared out, another area deserves closer attention. One that's not just about space, but directly about safety: the medicine cabinet. Here, check your medicine cabinet expired. Medicines are hidden clutter that can be harmful if overlooked. Expired medicines are the most dangerous form of clutter because they create a false sense of security. Seeing medicine in the cabinet makes many people feel prepared, even though expired medicine may no longer work or could even be harmful. Medicines are usually bought during urgent moments, headaches, colds, allergies, or short-term treatments. Later, they're placed in the cabinet and slowly forgotten. Labels fade, boxes get dented, expiration dates pass unnoticed. When it's time to clean it, it becomes hard to tell what's still safe, and out of fear of not having enough people, often keep everything. For me, opening the medicine cabinet and seeing rows of expired pills created deep discomfort. Not because of money, but because I realized potentially dangerous items had been sitting in my home unnoticed for too long. It felt like discovering a hidden risk in a place meant to feel safe. The solution is straightforward: discard all expired medicine, unlabeled medicine, or items you no longer remember the purpose of. Keep only what's within date and truly necessary. A clean cabinet doesn't just save space, it restores peace of mind when medicine is needed. After organizing the medicine cabinet, you may start noticing items that finished their purpose long ago, like old calendars. Another small but meaningful task is removing outdated calendars which subtly anchor your space in the past. Old calendars are often kept simply because there's no clear moment to throw them away. Last year's wall calendar, desk calendars, long past their final month promotional calendars, placed in a corner. They don't cause major inconvenience and don't take up much space, so they're easily ignored despite having no practical value. Calendars are meant to serve the present. When a new year begins, the old calendar's job is done. Keeping it doesn't add convenience, it subtly anchors the space in the past. It's quiet, not visually chaotic, but it represents unfinished closure. Looking around the house, old calendars appear in familiar places: a desk corner, a shelf behind cabinet doors. They aren't revisited or used as keepsakes, yet they remain as habits that were never completed. Each one is a small ellipsis, unnecessary but never addressed. Letting go of old calendars is a small action with a clear meaning, making room for the present. Instead of passively letting them occupy space, that space can be left empty or used for something that truly serves daily life. The lightness doesn't come from discarding paper, but from closing what's already finished. With the paper clutter out of the way, larger pieces come into focus, especially furniture. Finally, observe excess furniture. Removing or rearranging pieces creates breathing room without changing your home's style. Excess furniture doesn't make a home messy, it makes it feel cramped in a way that's hard to define. A chair. No one sits on a side table, rarely used an empty shelf blocking a walkway. They're clearly visible, yet easily accepted as part of the house because they've been there for so long. The discomfort comes from how excess furniture quietly divides living space. Pathways' narrow natural light is blocked, and every movement requires a little extra maneuvering. At first, it's barely noticeable, but repeated daily, it becomes exhausting. Observing the living space, I noticed pieces of furniture that no longer served current needs, yet stayed simply because they were familiar. They weren't broken or ugly, so they were never questioned. But once one item was moved away, the room immediately felt lighter and more open, even though the size hadn't changed at all. Simplifying furniture doesn't mean buying new things or changing style. It means removing items that no longer have a reason to stay, or rearranging so each piece has a clear role. Living spaces need room to function smoothly, and people need that space to feel at ease. Once furniture is simplified, one truth becomes very clear. A home doesn't need to be filled with things to feel complete. It needs enough space to truly be lived in. If you've made it this far and at least one item in your home has already come to mind, something that's quietly taking up space, leave a comment below. It doesn't have to be long. Just naming the item is enough. Sometimes calling it out is the first step toward letting it go. Decluttering isn't about becoming a minimalist. It's about living a little lighter each day. By letting go of a few things that no longer fit your life, you give yourself more room to breathe, to think, and to begin again. In the next video, I'll be reorganizing the pantry, but it's not just about food. It's also a moment to rethink how I set goals for 2026, less scattered, more intentional, and truly supportive of everyday life. A fresh start beginning with very small changes. If you found this helpful, please like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. I'm really glad to be walking alongside you on this journey toward a simpler, lighter way of living.